Welcome back, everyone. Tonight I have a story for you that still chills me to the bone. It's about a place called Blackwood Asylum. Now it's been abandoned for decades, left to rot on a lonely hill overlooking the town of Silent Creek. You might have heard whispers, local legends. They all paint a grim picture. But I never truly understood the depth of that darkness until I went there myself. I'm an urban explorer, you see. I'm drawn to forgotten places, to the echoes of lives lived and lost. Blackwood had been on my list for years, its reputation preceding it like a shroud. They say terrible things happened within those walls. Unspeakable treatments, cries that echoed through the night, and a lingering sense of despair that even the wind seemed to carry. Finally, last autumn, I decided to go. The air was crisp, the leaves were turning, and there was this eerie stillness about the whole area. Getting in wasn't easy. The place was heavily boarded up. But eventually I found a way, a broken window, hidden behind a tangle of overgrown ivy. Stepping inside was like stepping into another world, a world frozen in time and decay. The air was thick with the smell of dust, mildew, and something else. Something vaguely medicinal and unsettling. Moonlight filtered through broken panes, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with every rustle of debris. The main hall was vast and cavernous, with peeling paint and crumbling plaster revealing the building's skeletal structure. Old wheelchairs lay overturned, their wheels rusted solid. Restraint straps dangled from broken beds in what must have been dormitories. Each room whispered stories of suffering, of lives confined and broken. As I moved deeper into the asylum, the atmosphere grew heavier. I started hearing things, faint whispers, like voices carried on the wind, even though there wasn't a breeze inside. Sometimes I'd catch a fleeting shadow in the corner of my eye, only to find nothing there when I turned. My camera was my constant companion, documenting the decay, but even through the lens I felt this growing sense of unease, like I was intruding on something that didn't want to be disturbed. I found the old treatment rooms, cold, sterile spaces with ominous-looking equipment gathering dust. There were surgical tools laid out on a table, as if the doctor had just stepped away. It sent a shiver down my spine to imagine the procedures that might have taken place there, the pain and desperation that must have filled those rooms. Then I found the isolation cells, small windowless rooms with padded walls, now torn and stained. The silence in those cells was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water. It was in one of these cells that I first felt a truly distinct presence. The air grew icy cold, and I felt this overwhelming sense of sadness, of utter despair washing over me. It was so intense, so palpable. It felt like a physical weight on my chest. I tried to rationalize everything, of course. The power of suggestion, the atmosphere of the place playing tricks on my mind. But as the night wore on, the occurrences became more pronounced. Doors would creak open on their own. I heard footsteps in the empty corridors, echoing from rooms I knew were deserted. The whispers became clearer, more distinct, sometimes sounding like cries for help, other times just unintelligible murmurs that seemed to surround me. There was one particular room in the administrative wing that felt different from the rest. It was an old office, and on a dusty desk, I found a ledger. It was the patient log from decades ago. As I carefully turned the brittle pages, I saw names, diagnoses, many of them vague and disturbing, and notes on treatments. One name kept appearing, Elias Thorne. His entries were particularly unsettling, detailing increasingly erratic behavior and unusual claims. He spoke of seeing shadows, of hearing voices that weren't there, of something dark residing within the asylum itself. The later entries for Elias were simply marked Isolation Level 5. I eventually found Level 5, a section of the asylum that was even more dilapidated and foreboding than the rest. The cells here were reinforced, the doors heavy and bolted from the outside. One door, however, was slightly ajar. Hesitantly, I pushed it open. The room was pitch black, the air thick with a cloying metallic scent. As my flashlight beam cut through the darkness, I saw it. Scrawled all over the walls, in what looked like dried blood, were symbols. Strange, unsettling symbols that I didn't recognize. And in the center of the room, on the floor, was a single tarnished mirror facing the corner. As I approached the mirror, a gust of icy air swept through the room, extinguishing my flashlight. I fumbled for my backup, my heart pounding in my chest. When the beam finally flickered back to life, I looked at the mirror. My own reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed in the dim light. But behind me, in the reflection, I saw something else. A dark, shadowy figure. Its form indistinct but undeniably present, standing in the corner where the mirror had been facing. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. The corner was empty. I turned back to the mirror, and the figure was still there, its shadowy hand reaching out towards my reflection. A cold dread washed over me, a primal fear unlike anything I had ever experienced. It felt like whatever this was, it wasn't just in the asylum. It was somehow connected to that mirror, perhaps even trapped within it. Suddenly the whispers intensified, becoming a cacophony of voices swirling around me. I felt a cold touch on my neck, and a voice, raspy and ancient, whispered directly into my ear. A single word. Mine. That was it. That was the moment I knew I had to get out. I didn't care about documenting anything else. Survival became my only instinct. I stumbled back through the darkness. The feeling of being watched, of being followed, never leaving me. The whispers seemed to chase me through the corridors, growing louder, more menacing. I finally made it back to the broken window, scrambling through the tangled ivy and out into the cold night air. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, my lungs burning, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. I never went back to Blackwood Asylum. I left the photos I took untouched for weeks, unable to bring myself to look at them. When I finally did, most were just images of decay, of forgotten rooms. But there was one photo taken in that office with the ledger. In the background, just behind the desk, there's a faint, almost imperceptible shadow, a dark figure lurking in the corner. It wasn't there when I took the picture. I know it wasn't. To this day, I can still hear those whispers sometimes, especially on quiet nights, and I can still feel that icy touch on my neck. Blackwood Asylum. It's more than just an abandoned building. It's a place where something dark took root, something that might still be waiting for its next visitor. And I can't shake the feeling that I brought a little piece of it back with me. So if you ever find yourself near Silent Creek, take my advice. Steer clear of the hill. Some doors are best left unopened, and some silences are truly terrifying.